Have you ever felt empty for no clear reason? Not broken, not sad, just hollow, like there's a quiet room inside you where something used to be, but now it's just still. If that's you right now, this video is for you. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to fix it. You just need someone to sit with you in that stillness. And I will. For the next few moments, let this be a space where you can breathe, feel nothing, and still feel whole. Because emptiness is not a failure. It might just be your first taste of freedom. If you've ever felt like this, I invite you to subscribe, not for more answers, but for more soft, spacious moments like this. Let's sit together. Crescent Moon. Part 1, the hollow space inside. You don't know exactly when it started. Maybe it was this morning. Maybe a week ago. Maybe it's been growing quietly, like a shadow that no longer waits for light. You wake up. You move. You work. You smile when you need to. Everything looks okay. But inside there's a space. A space you don't know how to fill. Not sadness. Not pain. Just space. Quiet. Empty. Unnamed. You touch your chest and it doesn't ache, but it doesn't feel full either. Feels like something's missing, but you can't even say what it is. You've tried. A new goal. A new playlist. A new meditation app. Maybe if you sleep more, or eat cleaner, or open the window, but the hollow doesn't move. It just sits there, still, like an abandoned room no one talks about. We call this feeling many things: burnout, emotional fatigue, low-grade depression, spiritual stagnation. But sometimes labels don't help. They make the space feel smaller, explainable, treatable. And this space doesn't want to be explained. It just wants to be seen. You see, Buddhism doesn't rush to fix a feeling. It doesn't say, "You feel empty? Here's how to stop." It says, "You feel empty? Good. Now sit with it." Because that hollowness you're trying to escape might not be emptiness at all. It might be spaciousness. There's a difference. Emptiness feels cold. Spaciousness feels open. Emptiness feels like something is missing. Spaciousness feels like there's room for something to arrive. But they can look the same on the outside. They can feel the same at first. The only way to tell the difference is to stop running from the feeling. Sit. Close your eyes. Don't try to meditate. Don't try to breathe a certain way. Just sit. Feel the hollow. Feel the place in you that doesn't hurt, but doesn't shine. The place where you expected joy and got stillness instead. Don't fix it. Don't push it away. Don't even ask why. Just let it exist. And maybe, just maybe, you'll notice something strange. The hollow space inside you isn't trying to be filled. It's trying to breathe. In Buddhism, there's a concept known as sunyata, often translated as emptiness. But that word doesn't mean meaningless or void. It means freedom from fixed identity. Freedom from the illusion of permanence. Freedom from trying to be full all the time. You see, we live in a world that worships fullness. Full calendars, full fridges, full hearts, full inboxes. And when something feels empty, we panic. We rush to fill it, because silence is uncomfortable. Stillness feels like failure, and space feels like something went wrong. But in Buddhist practice, space is sacred. The hollow is not your enemy. It is your invitation. Imagine a cup that is already full. Can you pour tea into it? No. It overflows. It spills. There's no space for anything new. Now imagine a cup that is empty, clean, waiting, spacious. That is you right now. The hollowness you feel might be the readiness to receive something deeper, but only if you stop trying to fill it too quickly. Only if you trust that the silence has something to say. There's a story from the Zen tradition. A student came to the master and said, "My heart feels hollow. I don't know what's wrong." The master smiled and replied, "Good. That means there's room now." The student frowned. "But shouldn't I feel full of love, of clarity, of purpose?" The master poured tea into the student's cup. It filled to the top, then kept pouring. The tea spilled over the sides. "See," said the master, "when you're too full of shoulds, There's no room for what is. The student nodded slowly, and for the first time he didn't rush to feel better. He just watched the tea soak into the earth, and something in his chest softened. So maybe you feel empty today. Not broken, not numb, just not whole. That's okay. That's the space where something real can be born. But not if you try to name it too fast. Not if you rush to replace it. Not if you treat it like a mistake. This is not a problem. This is a pause. This is the inhale before the next becoming. You've carried so many stories about who you should be, what you should want, what you should have figured out by now. Maybe the emptiness you feel is those stories finally fading. Maybe what feels like nothing is actually the beginning of truth. There's another Buddhist teaching that says, when the self is no longer grasped, space arises, and in that space, compassion can move freely. You can't grasp compassion. You can't fill space with effort. You can only allow it. So let this be your practice tonight. Don't fight the hollow. Don't fill it with affirmations or distractions. Just notice it, like a wide field under moonlight, quiet, open, bare, but beautiful in its own gentle way. Sit with that field. Walk across it slowly. Lie down in the center of it. Feel how vast it is, and know that this space is not something missing. It is something arriving. You don't feel empty for no reason. You feel empty because your soul is clearing space for something more honest, more alive, more you. You just don't know what it is yet, and that's okay. Part 2, the story we can't tell. There's a kind of silence that lives inside you, not the peaceful kind, not the kind that makes you feel calm, but the kind that hovers just behind your words, just beneath your smile. It lives in the space between I'm fine and I don't know what's wrong. It follows you into conversations. It sits beside you when you laugh, and it tightens just a little every time someone asks, "How are you really?" Because the truth is, you don't know how to answer, not because there's nothing wrong, but because there is no language for what you're carrying. And that is where the emptiness begins. Sometimes the most painful stories are not the ones we remember clearly. They're the ones that never had words. The moment you looked out the window and felt everything fall away. The silence after someone left, but no one talked about it. The way you stopped asking questions because no one had answers. The ache you buried under responsibility. The dreams you forgot to chase because someone needed you more. These are not stories with clear beginnings, middles, and ends. They're fragments, fog, moments that almost mattered but didn't feel big enough to grieve. And so you never spoke of them, not out loud, not even inside, but your body remembers, your breath remembers, your eyes remember, your silence remembers. And every time you ignore those pieces, every time you say, "I'm okay, it's nothing," the hollow grows, not as punishment, but as a signal, a quiet alarm from the part of you that has never been allowed to speak. Buddhist teachings don't force you to revisit trauma. They don't demand you relive your pain, but they do invite you to be intimate with your silence, to listen not with judgment, but with compassion, because sometimes the story you can't tell is the one that most wants to be held. There is a Zen parable of a monk who carried a sealed letter in his robe for 30 years. When he died, they found the letter still unopened. No one knew what it said, but the ink had long since faded. What remained was only the weight of what was never read. You too might be carrying such letters, moments you never processed, questions you never dared ask, truths you sensed but kept folded inside. And now your heart feels empty, not from lack, but from unread emotion. You don't have to tell the whole story today. You don't even have to tell it out loud, but you do have to sit beside it, like sitting beside a friend who has been quiet for a very long time. You don't ask them to speak. You don't pressure them to explain. You just show up, and maybe slowly they begin to unfold, not in neat lines, not in logic, but in feelings, tears that have no reason, long sighs at random hours, a sudden longing when a certain song plays. These are the footsteps of your forgotten stories, and when you begin to listen, the hollow begins to soften, not because the story is over, but because it's no longer alone. Buddhist psychology speaks of samskara, the formations of the mind. These are the impressions, the mental grooves, the unspoken scripts that shape how we move through the world. Samskara are not just what we remember. They are also what we repeat unconsciously because we never paused long enough to question them. The person who feels empty might be carrying a lifetime of unspoken samskara, inherited silence, cultural quiet, generational suppression, the good child story, the strong one role. You wear these without knowing, and eventually they wear through you, leaving space, a hollow. Question: if I stopped being who I've always been, what would remain? That question is not meant to be answered. It is meant to be sat with. So what can you do tonight? Not much, and that's a good thing. Just notice. Notice the moments you swallow your truth. The times you change the subject, not for politeness but to protect something inside. The heaviness that has no words, but lingers like weather. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to find the right sentence. You only have to sit beside the story and say silently, I don't know how to tell you, but I'm here now, and I'm listening. That is more powerful than any healing technique. That is love. Love in Buddhism is not always active. It is often presence. It is the willingness to sit with pain without trying to solve it. And when you bring that kind of love to your inner hollowness, something begins to shift. The hollow becomes less sharp, less urgent, less terrifying. It becomes familiar, not as in comfortable, but as in, I know this place. I've been avoiding it, but now I'm ready to breathe here. And that breath, that first real breath in the room you used to avoid, that is the beginning of letting go. Letting go of the pressure to be clear, to be strong, to be expressive, to be healed already. Letting go of the myth that silence is emptiness. Letting go of the idea that your story must be told perfectly to matter. Because the truth is, you are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to not know what you're carrying. You are allowed to just feel the hollow and still be whole. So tonight, when the world quiets and the empty feeling returns, don't fill it, don't fix it, just welcome it. Say, maybe you are the story I've never told. Maybe I don't have to. Maybe we can just be quiet together, and that is enough. And in that quiet, something sacred begins. Not loud, not bright, just real, just you, still here, still breathing. Part 3, the illusion of fullness. You got what you wanted, or at least what you thought you wanted. The job, the relationship, the degree, the apartment with soft lighting and clean lines, the shelf of books you swore you'd read, the morning routine you curated with care. It's all there, and yet, you sit on your couch one quiet evening, look around your life, and wonder, why do I still feel empty? You don't say it out loud. Feels ungrateful, almost shameful, because this is what you worked for. This is what everyone told you would make you feel full. So why don't you? Buddhism doesn't judge this feeling. It doesn't say, you should be more grateful. It doesn't say, just try harder to be happy. Instead, it invites you to ask a different question. What kind of fullness have I been chasing? There is a kind of fullness that fills the schedule, but empties the soul. A kind of life that is polished on the outside, but hollow at its core. It's not your fault. You were taught to collect experiences, achievements, photos, milestones, certainty. The more you have, the more complete you're supposed to feel. But Buddhist wisdom reminds us, what you carry does not determine who you are. Sometimes the more you carry, the less space you have to breathe. There's a Zen story about a man who came to a master seeking enlightenment. The master offered him tea. He poured the tea into the man's cup and kept pouring, even when the cup overflowed. "Stop!" the man cried. "It's spilling." The master looked at him calmly and said, "Exactly. You are like this cup, full of your own opinions, full of your own life. How can I give you anything if there's no room?" This is the illusion of fullness. You can be full of things, but empty of truth. full of tasks, but empty of presence, full of noise, but empty of peace. And here's the gentle, painful part. Sometimes we fill ourselves up because we're too afraid of the silence that comes with space. The truest form of emptiness isn't scary, but the moment before it arrives, that moment of stillness, of not knowing, that's what we run from. So we scroll, we schedule, we consume, we chase, and then we wonder why we're so tired, even though we're so full. But fullness isn't always nourishment. There's a difference between being fed and being filled. You can eat a feast and feel sick. You can scroll for hours and feel numb. You can be surrounded by people and still feel unseen. And the worst part, you may not even know you're starving, because you've mistaken quantity for fulfillment. But the soul doesn't measure in volume. It measures in intimacy. So how do we live in a world that keeps telling us to add more, when what we really need is less? Buddhism teaches the path of subtraction, not minimalism as aesthetic, but as liberation. Let go and see what remains, not out of discipline, but out of compassion, because you've been carrying too much, and none of it made you feel more you. Close your eyes, picture your life, all of it, the people, the plans, the dreams, the rituals, the expectations. Now gently ask, which of these truly feed me? Not which ones impress others, not which ones give you status or control, not which ones numb the ache, but which ones quietly, simply make you feel alive. Maybe it's the morning walk. Maybe it's the friend who asks, "What's on your heart?" Maybe it's the book you read slowly with tea. Keep those, and let the rest begin to fall away. Not in one day, but breath by breath. Because every time you release what is false fullness, you make space for something real. There's a metaphor in Buddhist meditation. Imagine you are holding a bowl, but the bowl is filled with sand. You keep asking the universe for water, for nourishment, but when it rains, the water can't stay, because the sand absorbs it, muddies it, wastes it. Only when you pour out the sand, gently with presence, can the bowl receive water. So what is the sand in your life? What looks like fullness, but leaves you thirstier? What have you been calling abundance? That is actually anxiety in disguise. Letting go doesn't always mean leaving everything behind. Sometimes it simply means, I choose not to believe that this thing will complete me. It means trusting that your value was never in what you could gather, but in what you could hold lightly and still be whole. Tonight, if you feel full and empty at the same time, that is not failure. That is awareness. That is your soul saying, the life I built was beautiful, but not big enough for who I'm becoming. And that is sacred. You are allowed to begin again. You are allowed to pause in the middle of everything and whisper, I thought this would make me feel full, but now I know I don't need more. I need meaning, and meaning does not come from what you possess. It comes from what you're present with. Even if all you're present with tonight is a breath, that too is fullness. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that stays. Part 4, letting go of the ghost self. There's a version of you that no longer lives, but still follows you everywhere. You hear it in your thoughts, feel it in your reactions, see it in the mirror when your face forgets to pretend. This version of you is not evil, not broken, not something to destroy. It is simply a ghost, the ghost self, the part of you that was once necessary, once brave, once deeply loved or deeply hurt, and now no longer needed, but still here. You feel empty, not because you are nothing, but because you're still holding someone. You were never meant to carry this long. A self who was built for survival, for proving, for pleasing, for hiding, for making it through. They served you, they walked with you through fire, but now the fire is gone, and the ghost remains. In Buddhism, there's no fixed self. The self is not an identity, but a series of conditions, pattern of responses, a formation of habit, memory, sensation, and attachment. The self is like a shadow on water. It appears real until you try to touch it. So when you feel empty, When the life you built no longer fits, it may not be because something is wrong. It may be because you've outgrown the self who built it. And that self doesn't know how to say goodbye. You don't need to fight them. You don't need to shame them. You don't even need to understand them fully. You just need to see them, to recognize the ghost when it visits, to say, I remember you, I honor you, but I don't need you anymore. There's a story told by a Buddhist teacher. A woman carried a lantern through a village every night. Years ago, she had been attacked in the dark, so she promised never to walk without light again. Every night since, even when the streets were safe, even when the village glowed with electricity, she carried her lantern. People admired her for her discipline. But one night, a child asked, "Why do you still carry it? There's light everywhere now." And in that moment, the woman realized she had been protecting a version of herself that no longer existed. That lantern was her ghost. You too might be carrying something that once made sense. A dream, a defense, a version of love that asked you to shrink. The ghost self is subtle. It shows up in how you say yes too quickly, how you shrink in rooms that feel familiar, how you explain yourself before you've even spoken, how you rehearse answers even when no one's asking questions. It's not a flaw. It's a memory that never got released. And maybe that's why you feel empty, not because you've failed, but because you're finally becoming too alive to keep pretending. You've changed, but the ghost hasn't. And now it haunts you, not to scare you, but to ask, are you ready to set me free? You don't need a ritual, just a quiet conversation. Sit down, breathe, close your eyes. Picture the version of you that still lingers. The one who protected you, the one who absorbed the pain so you could keep walking. And say, you kept me alive. You helped me become who I am. And now, I can walk from here. The ghost may not vanish immediately. It may return, especially on tired days, quiet nights, moments of doubt. But each time you'll recognize it more quickly. And each time you'll say, thank you for showing me how far I've come. This is not rejection. This is release. Buddhist teachings don't demand you erase the past. They simply remind you that freedom isn't about forgetting. It's about not mistaking what was for what still is. Your ghost self once wore your name, but you are no longer only that name. You are the wind that changed direction, the leaf that turned colors, the song that found a new rhythm. So what do you do with the emptiness? You fill it with presence. Not plans, not fixes, just presence. You sit in the silence the ghost once filled, and feel it settle, feel it soften, feel it shift, until the hollow becomes a home, and the past becomes a blessing. Tonight, before you sleep, whisper to the self you used to be, you were never a mistake, you were a bridge, and I have crossed. Then breathe, and let the ghost rest. Part 5, The Still Room Within. There is a room inside you, not a real one, not made of walls or windows, but it exists. You don't go there often. You forget it's even there. But in the quietest moments, when the noise fades, when the pretending stops, when even your thoughts grow tired, you might catch a glimpse. It has no furniture, no distractions, no mirrors, only stillness, only space, just the room where your soul breathes. We spend most of our lives in the outer rooms, the room of performance, the room of productivity, the room of relationships, the room of seeking, scrolling, speaking. Those rooms are loud, filled with should and must and next. We dress for them, we decorate them, we even pray inside them, sometimes hoping something outside can fix what's unraveling within. But the still room is different. It asks for nothing. It waits for no one. It simply is. Buddhism doesn't ask you to escape the world, but it does ask you to remember what you are looking for is not out there. It is in the quiet room you forgot how to enter. The door is always open, but the hallway leading there is narrow. And most of us, we carry too much to fit through, too many roles, too many answers, too many versions of ourselves trying to be enough. So we stay in the noisy rooms, because they feel like progress, because silence feels like failure, But silence is not failure. Silence is return. When you finally sit down, not because you finished your to-do list, but because your soul simply can't keep pushing. You may feel it, that strange, familiar emptiness. Not loneliness, not sadness, just space. As if everything you thought you were has stepped outside for a moment, and only your breath remains. That is the doorway. That is the beginning. The still room within you doesn't solve problems. It doesn't provide answers, because the questions don't exist there. There is no, why am I like this? No, what do I do next? No, how do I fix it? There is only breath, and presence, and the miracle of not needing to become anything. In Zen, there is a saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Because nothing outside changes. Only the room you live from. Before, you lived in rooms built by fear, by ambition, by comparison. Now, you sit in the still room, and even as the world spins, you are unmoved, not because you don't care, but because you are no longer tethered to the noise. You don't have to meditate for hours. You don't have to renounce anything. You only have to pause, to sit, to breathe, to allow silence to be more than background. Because silence is not empty. It is full of listening. And in that room, you might begin to hear something you've forgotten. Your own heartbeat, your own longing, your own voice before the world told you what to say. There's a metaphor in Buddhist practice. The muddy water clears when left undisturbed, not when stirred, not when fixed, but when left alone. Your heart too may be muddy. Your mind too may be swirling. But the still room doesn't ask you to purify. It simply invites you to stop stirring. And in that stillness, the truth begins to rise. Not loudly, not all at once, but like a soft light through fog. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not late. You are simply in the hallway, and the room is waiting. So tonight, don't try to feel better. Don't try to feel anything. Just find a quiet corner, or close your eyes, and whisper, even if only inside, I am home now, and let that be enough. Even if the emptiness lingers, it's okay, because the emptiness isn't asking to be filled. It's asking to be honored, to be seen not as a problem, but as a place, a sacred space, where you meet the self that doesn't need fixing. That's the paradox. What you've been searching for isn't missing. It's been sitting quietly, in the still room within you, waiting for you to finally stop looking everywhere else, and just be. Part 6, Learning to Sit with the Void. There is a moment between distraction and despair. The strange, quiet moment, when the noise stops working, the scrolling stops numbing, the plans stop exciting, and you're left with it. The void. You feel it in your chest. Not sharp, not violent, but there, like standing in a vast, dark field at midnight. You turn in every direction, but there is no path, only space. This is the part where most people run, or reach, or fill. But what if you didn't? What if just this once, you sat down in the middle of the void and stayed? Buddhism doesn't tell you to escape the void. It invites you to befriend it, because the void isn't punishment. It's not failure. It's not the end of something. It's the beginning, the space before identity, before striving, before becoming. The void is not what's left when life is gone. It is where life begins again, but only if you stay long enough to see it. There's a teaching in Zen that says, only when the mind is empty can the moon reflect clearly. The mind that's full of thoughts, regrets, distractions, ripples the water, but the mind that's still shows the sky. When you sit with the void, you're not trying to reflect. You're simply becoming clear enough for truth to appear on its own. The first thing you'll notice is discomfort. It may rise as restlessness, or doubt, or the thought, this is useless. I should be doing something. But the void isn't asking for anything. It doesn't want answers. It doesn't reward effort. It simply waits, like an old friend who never needed you to impress them. When you stop trying to feel better, the void starts to soften. And that's when you begin to see it's not a hole, it's a horizon. But what do you actually do when you're in the void? Nothing. You sit, you breathe, you let go of why is this here? You let go of when will it go away? You let go of what does this mean? And you allow presence to rise, not as a thought, but as a feeling, like sitting on the floor of a vast cathedral. You don't fill the silence, you listen to it, and something inside begins to shift. Maybe this isn't emptiness. Maybe this is stillness you've never met before. Maybe you're not lost. You're just arriving somewhere deeper, but without maps, without language, without applause. There's a story in Buddhist lore. A monk meditated in a cave for years. People would visit and ask, "What did you discover?" He would smile and say, "I learned how to be with nothing and found everything." They thought he was joking, but he wasn't, because in the void, you stop searching for meaning and become meaning itself. When you sit with the void long enough, you realize this isn't absence, a spacious presence, like the space between notes in music. It's what makes the melody possible. Like the pause between thoughts is what makes awareness clear. The void is not the opposite of life. It's what holds life, just like silence holds sound, just like sky holds stars. So how do you practice this? You don't need hours, just 3 minutes. Each night, sit in a room, no music, no task, no goal, and say to the space inside, "I will not run from you tonight. I will sit beside you like a friend." Then breathe, feel the thoughts come and go. Feel the resistance rise and fall. Feel the fear whisper and fade. And then maybe feel nothing at all. That's when you know you've arrived. Because the void does not give you clarity. It gives you capacity, the ability to hold life, not chase it, the strength to rest, not fix, the permission to simply be, not become. You've spent years trying to figure it out. And here's what the void will teach you. There's nothing to figure out, only something to feel. And once you let go of the need to understand, a deeper knowing rises, not in words, not in logic, but in peace. Peace that says, I don't need to be full, I just need to be still. The void is no longer your enemy. It is no longer the thing you fear at 2 a.m. It is the place you return to when the world is too loud, too fast, too false. It is your temple, your retreat, your beginning again. Tonight, before you sleep, sit in the dark. One candle, one breath, one presence, and say, not as a prayer, but as a whisper to yourself, I no longer need to run from the emptiness, because now it walks beside me. Part 7, when emptiness becomes freedom. There comes a moment, quiet, uncelebrated, when the emptiness you once feared stops feeling heavy. It doesn't go away. It doesn't fill itself with joy or purpose or passion. It simply changes, becomes lighter, softer, spacious, and in that moment, without even realizing it, you've crossed a threshold. The void is no longer your burden. It is your liberation. For so long, you tried to fix it. You named it, blamed it, fought it, feared it. But now, you sit beside it, walk with it, sleep with it curled around your soul like a gentle fog. It no longer bites. It no longer claws, because you no longer run. And that shift is freedom. In Buddhist teachings, nirvana is not heaven. It's not bliss. It's not perfection. It is the extinguishing of clinging, the cooling of the fire that says, I must become more. I must fix this. I must not feel empty. When that fire fades, what's left is not ash, but sky, vast, open, unburdened. You are no longer trapped in the story of what should be. You are simply present with what is. And in that presence, you are free. This is the final teaching of the void. You don't need to fill me. You only need to stop believing I'm a problem. Because maybe emptiness was never the enemy. Maybe it was the space between old versions of yourself. The pause before the next breath of becoming. Maybe it's not the absence of life, but the return to life without noise. Let's look at the sky. When clouds pass, we say the sky is empty. But is it, or is it simply clear? Clear to hold stars, clear to hold flight, clear to hold silence. Your heart too can be like that. Once burdened with names and labels, now it is just here, no longer proving, no longer performing, just open. And that openness, that gentle, sacred openness, is the very definition of freedom. In Zen tradition, there is a phrase, no self, no problem, not because you stop existing, but because you stop clinging to the self that always needs something. You stop saying, I must be this to be okay, and you start saying, I can simply be, even in silence, even in not knowing, even in a life that doesn't follow the story you once wrote. This is where emptiness becomes a friend. You no longer fear waking up with no plan. You no longer fear moments of quiet. You no longer fear not feeling inspired, because you've learned you are more than what you do, more than what you want, more than what you feel. You are space itself, able to hold joy, able to hold grief, able to hold nothing, and still be whole. So tonight, after all the seeking, the longing, the unraveling, if you sit down and still feel that soft hollow in your chest, smile at it, not because it's gone, but because it no longer controls you. You're not running from it. You're not begging it to explain itself. You're just here. And that is the most powerful place you can be. Breathe, not to calm, not to fix, just to return to this moment, to this version of you, the one who no longer needs to be anything more than aware. You are not lacking. You are not broken. You are not in transition. You are awake, even in stillness, even in space, especially in space. This is what freedom feels like. Not the thrill of having everything, but the peace of needing nothing. Not the noise of achievement, but the silence of being enough. Not the fullness of more, but the freedom of less clinging, less striving, less illusion. So here you are, at the end of this quiet journey, not with a fix, not with a revelation, but with something more precious. Permission to be empty and still worthy, still loved, still free. Permission to no longer explain your silence, to no longer fill your day with purpose, to no longer fear the quiet inside. You are allowed to feel nothing and still be everything. So light a candle tonight, or don't. Sit in silence, or let the wind speak for you, and say just once with your whole breath, I'm not looking for meaning anymore. I'm living it, because you are. Every breath, every pause, every space between words, you are living the very thing you once feared. You are living free. Maybe you still feel empty, and maybe that's no longer a problem, because emptiness in Buddhist teachings is not absence. It's space. Space to breathe, space to rest, space to simply be without effort. You don't need to fill it. You don't need to fight it. You only need to sit beside it, like a friend who's finally stopped asking questions. And in that stillness, you may notice something quietly arriving. Not joy, not clarity, but something even more sacred, freedom. If this video held you gently, leave a sparkles in the comments, or whisper back, I'm learning to sit with the void. And if you feel called, subscribe, not to follow, but to keep returning to the still room within you.